Hello, friends. This is a podcast to introduce Section 11.2 in your AP Stats book. The good news is that we went very far in depth in Section 11.1, so this is going to be a lot of stuff that's where the ideas have already been introduced in class. So hopefully that'll make it a little bit easier, and we'll get a little more depth of understanding. And a big part of what we're going to do now is obviously the name of the section is carrying out significance tests. We're going to basically apply what we learned, the basics that we learned in section 11.1. And I am going to start by restating completely what exactly needs to be included in the inference toolbox. So again, we've been doing problems in these inference toolboxes now for about a month, and you should be very familiar with this. But let me just restate. I'm going to go with this one. All right, what should be going in each section? Now, the purpose of this is to learn how to write the sentences that will be required of you when you're communicating on the AP exam. So, first thing is, in this introduction, you're going to state clearly the population of interest. And the good news is that this is going to be stated clearly in the problem. You're basically just going to have to restate the population as it's described in the problem. And then there's always going to be some parameter of interest. All right. So the population could be all high school seniors that are going to college. And the parameter of interest could be what is their average SAT score. Okay. So in that case, the parameter of interest is a mean. Okay, so if I wanted to know the average height, the average weight, the average income, the average SAT score for all high school seniors going to college, that's a mean. If I wanted to know what percentage come from divorced families, what percentage have red hair, what percentage own their own car, all of these would be proportions. So you're going to state clearly what the parameter of interest is, and that is either going to be a mu if it's a mean, or it's going to be a p if it's a proportion. Okay? Finally, you're going to state what kind of test or what kind of procedure you are going to do. Okay? And the procedure will be either a confidence interval, or it'll be some kind of hypothesis test. And if it's a mean, you should state whether it's going to be Z procedures or T procedures. And of course, if it's a proportion, it's going to be Z procedures because you don't have to worry about sigma. Okay, in the second section, you should know this very well right now. You have three conditions that are always going to be true. My sample needs to be random. I need to make some explanation of how the sample I took is similar as possible to the population in makeup in all ways. I need to know that my sample is independent. This has to do with sample size. So remember we said for means, if my sample size is greater than 30, I could also, in proportions as long as the population was at least 10 times as big as a sample size, and then normal. And I reviewed in class the other day, I think everyone was there, this little tidbit, which said for means, if I want to be sure it's normal, as long as I can say the sample size was bigger than 30, I can assume it's normal. And then for proportions, we had this bit, we always had the n times p, these rules of thumb from earlier in the year, but we could just say if it's a proportion, it's an answer to a yes or no question, and as long as there were at least 10 yeses and at least 10 nos, I know that I can assume it's normal. For part 3, you are going to state the formula that you're going to use for the confidence interval or hypothesis test. You are going to show the substitution, and you're going to show the result. You're going to let the calculator do all the math, and if it's a result of a hypothesis test, you need the statistic and you need the p-value. And if it's a confidence interval, you're just going to write what the confidence interval is in these square brackets. And I'm going to finish the last section in the second podcast.